So Joe Biden went to meet with Mohammed Bin Salman over the weekend. I think he just returned to the U.S. maybe today or Sunday, but it was a part of his multi-day Middle East trip. Biden ran on making Saudi Arabia, quote, a pariah when he was on the campaign trail in 2020. Instead, he has been fist bumping with Mohammed Bin Salman. And he said in a speech after, I confronted him directly on the murder of Jamal Khashoggi in private. There's no way to verify that. In fact, my bet would be that he did not do such a thing. And Mohammed bin Salman understands that he has to say that publicly in order to cover his ass. But Biden is just like, rudderless at this point. And he feels that he needs to suck up to MBS because gas prices were high recently, although they've been on a steady decline for a few weeks. They're still quite high. But here's Chris Coons talking to Jake Tapper about this visit to Saudi Arabia. Chris Coons is mini Biden from the same state, and he is Biden's probably staunchest ally in the Senate.
Replaced him in the Senate, too, after Biden became vice president. So
yes.
Very linked, these two.
Was a surrogate on the campaign trail for Joe Biden, has hitched his wagon to him for quite a while. And so, of course, he's going to help Biden out, or try to at least, in the media.
First of all, Joe Biden, when he was running for president, he said he was going to turn Saudi Arabia into a pariah nation. Okay? He said he was going to turn Saudi Arabia into a pariah nation. He flew to Saudi Arabia and he fist bumped Mohammed bin Salman, the man responsible, according to Biden's own director of national intelligence, for ordering a brutal murder of a Washington Post journalist, killing him, and then dismembering him with a bone saw. I mean, that fist bump photograph, I think a lot of Americans saw that and were revolted by it.
What I'm revolted by is what I saw in Bucha, and what is a brutal and tough choice that our president faces is the path forward. When Russians are committing horrific human rights abuses every day in Ukraine, when the unity of the West and NATO is at risk, if we cannot secure additional resources for the gas and oil needs to replace Russian oil and gas in the coming months, and bluntly, our president faced a tough choice. The only three countries that have significant untapped reserves are Venezuela, Iran, and Saudi Arabia. And I think our president made a tough choice, but one I can respect as long as he continues to raise and press human rights issues. Absolutely. The killing of Jamal Khashoggi was horrifying. I would rather not be on this show saying that our president went and met with MBS. But given the situation we're in the world today, given what changed on February 24th, given what we all know about the ongoing murders, the brutal killing of innocent civilians happening every single day in Ukraine, I support our president.
The fiance of Jamal Khashoggi tweeted this in response to the fist bump photo. It says, quote, "What Jamal Khashoggi would tweet today." And then there is a tweet from Khashoggi saying, "Hey, POTUS, President of the United States, is this the accountability you promised for my murder? The blood of MBS's next victim is on your hands." The president's response to that was to say he was sorry that Khashoggi's fiance felt that way. What do you say to her?
Well, I hope to have the chance to talk with her directly. I know that senior White House officials did meet with her before this trip. And I think it is important that we listen to Jamal Khashoggi's widow, fiance, as you describe her, those in the journalism community, those in the Saudi dissident and diaspora community who find this a profoundly offensive moment and are gravely concerned about what comes next. I do think that engagement with MBS at a moment when he was making a choice between leaning more towards the West or leaning far further towards Russia and China was a hard choice, but one where I trust our president to sustain his commitment to human rights and to do the best thing he can in a tough circumstance.
So there's a lot there. One is, how can I hide behind Russia? How can I hide behind Ukraine? As soon as he immediately said the massacre in Bucha, that has nothing to do with this.
That's so gross too. What I'm revolted by. Oh yeah. Well, like how honorable, Chris Coons. Yeah, you're revolted by war crimes. So are we all. That
Yes.
doesn't mean you have to do.
But he's a little bit more revolted by the ones that are more convenient politically and that involve white people. Because something that never comes up here, and Jake Tapper did not bring it up in that line of questioning, is the genocide in Yemen. And that is, as much as the murder of Jamal Khashoggi, and you can say the words bone saw, and just like imagine the brutality of the murder of that dissident. And yes, the Biden administration has given MBS a pass on that. There's no way for Chris Coons to get around that. As much as that is horrific, the Saudi blockade is contributing directly to famine and disease and starvation and murder in Yemen. It is a proxy battle there that the United States is funding, albeit a little bit more indirectly, with just like a bit more of of a way of plausible deniability now under Biden. We're funding that through our continued relationship with arms. And we could say now it's just defense systems and defense weaponry that we're sending to Saudi Arabia. We're not helping them directly with offensive operations. Okay, well, how do you make that distinction? Because every empire, every country that's committing human rights violations, another one that we help fund, Biden visited over the weekend, Israel, they say that it's defensive. It's always defensive. The United States' invasion of Iraq, it's a legal invasion. That was a defensive move because Saddam Hussein was manufacturing nuclear weapons, and we all know that that wasn't the case. So it doesn't necessarily matter. Nothing has changed with our relationship with Saudi Arabia. Russia's invasion into Ukraine and the human rights violations there contributed to gas prices exploding, and now they're coming back down, and Biden is terrified that that's going to happen again because you have a dictator, essentially, Mohammed Bin Salman, who has the ability to manipulate prices and has his tentacles everywhere, so that Biden has to come crawling back to him. And that's what our relationship with big oil has come to. Biden is beholden to him. That is the case. And instead of using this as an opportunity to be forward thinking and say, this is why we have to get off fossil fuels, Biden goes crawling back to Mohammed bin Salman. And another thing I wanted to point out there, too, is how Chris Coons says with a straight face, our options were Venezuela.
Communist.
And then just moved on from it.
Can't go there, sorry.
Yeah. Right. No, actually, how about we look into that? How about we look into reopening and normalizing relationships with Venezuela just because we didn't like the fact that their leader was nationalizing their oil or was on a left wing?
Yeah, what's the commonality between Iran and Venezuela? Two countries that tried to nationalize their oil supply, which led the United States government to firmly push back and cut off all diplomatic relationships.
It's odd.
Interesting that those two were never options. Only Saudi Arabia and Russia before them.
It's so odd, right, Bradley? And it's interesting, too, that Iran is the greatest foe of Saudi Arabia and that they are engaging in a proxy battle in Yemen and the United States is helping fund it, which is still going on, by the way. So many coincidences. Like, and the right wing doesn't engage in this either, right? I mean, they just say we need to be drilling more here in the United States, more domestic drilling. So, like, it should be an opportunity for the Biden administration to say, hey, we should not be beholden to guys like this. We should not be having to come crawl back to them. And yet, they're never proactive with their messaging. He just keeps running scared. And instead, he gets to fist bump with MBS. What did Fox News call it when Obama did it? A terrorist fist jab? Yeah. Except this one might actually be that. Because a reminder that Saudi Arabia funded many of the hijackers on 9/11. So we're talking about actual terrorist fist jabs.